Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Jessica Flynn and I am the owner and maker of Flynn Sisters Boutique. And today I'm going to show you how to make this really beautiful marble design. Here is my inspiration. I've already prepped and spray painted my tumbler with a flat white spray paint, which I definitely recommend for this project. And also using a smaller tumbler because it is very detailed. We're going to start with our alcohol inks. I'm using Phone Home and this black from Jen's Crafted Gems. And we're going to squirt a few drops of that blue and about 3 or so drops of the black. This is what's going to give me a really deep navy color. And I'm going to blot a little bit of it with my paintbrush just to make sure I've got the right shade. And you can use any kind of paintbrush for this step, preferably like a fine one. In another medicine cup, I've also got some clean rubbing alcohol. I was practicing this earlier, so my rubbing alcohol is not very clean, but we're using 91% rubbing alcohol, which is also very important. We're going to start by lining out the veins in our marble with a pretty thick line. I only recommend doing a couple lines at a time first, just so you can kind of get the hang of it before laying down the rest of them. We also don't want these lines to dry too much before we go out to fade the edges. So taking a clean flat paintbrush, I'm going to dip that into my 91% rubbing alcohol, and I'm going to dab that along the outer edges of those veins that I just made to kind of fade them and bleed them out. If the alcohol ink starts to get away from me, I'm just going to hit it really quick with my heat gun to dry because we do not want this dripping. Also make sure that you blot your clean alcohol brush on a paper towel before you move in to start blending those edges, just again so you don't have an excess of alcohol just running around from you. Obviously, the thinner you want your veins, the more you want to fade them out with this step. I would also recommend doing this first step with a darker color. The lighter colors do not dissipate very well while keeping a very bold line for the veins. Because I tried this with like some lighter pinks and stuff and it just didn't turn out too well. That's why I like using the blue along with the black because it's going to make for such a deep, bold color. You can fade out those lines as much as you want. If you get too much, you could just take some more away with some of that clean rubbing alcohol. And again, you'll see me just intermittently hitting it with my heat gun to help dry things so they don't get out of control. If you're not able to really define that inner line of the vein too well or you lose it, don't worry because we can fix that later. Here's a closer look of this process. So again, with my clean brush, dipping it in the clean rubbing alcohol, blotting it on my paper towel, and then just very gently dabbing along the edges of that vein. If it starts to get away from me, I'm just going to hit it with my heat gun. I also learned after doing this for a solid 20 minutes to not have too much rubbing alcohol on that brush. Really dab some of that off and take your time. I'm not really brushing in strokes, more so just dabbing along that edge very gently. And the ink kind of tells you where it wants to go once you start fading this out. And you can kind of create new veins just from what we're doing here, like extending some of those veins into more like minute fractures off of the main vein. I repeated this process all the way around the cup. Once I was satisfied with my veins on the outer parts, we moved on to the very bottom. I saved the bottom for last because I wanted those veins to wrap around the bottom rim really nicely to almost make this look like one solid piece of marble. We just repeated that same process, wrapping the existing veins around the bottom corner of our cup, making those vein lines as organic and random as possible. And then again, just fading them out with the clean alcohol. Once we were done putting in the main veins of our marble, I got a different medicine cup with some more clean rubbing alcohol to move on to the orangey pink. For this color, I used like 5 drops of Flynnie and then 1 or 2 drops of this orange. I can't remember what it's called. I'm going to have all these inks listed in the description box. But anytime you're mixing different colors of inks to try and get a certain shade, make sure you blot it on your paper just to make sure you've got the right color. And with this pink color, I'm using a really fine tip brush, and I'm just kind of painting it in random places, trying to go along the veins in some places, some of those little nooks and crannies where the veins separated and came back together. I put some pink in there. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, Jessica, this is going to look crazy. I thought the same thing too, but when in doubt, add more alcohol, okay? So once we've got these pink sections placed hither and thither, we're going to take our clean brush with the clean alcohol, and we're just going to really blend out the pink sections. We're still going to blot our brush after we dip it in the clean alcohol, and then we're just going to go along those pink and orange areas and fade them out a bit, even when it's over the blue. But be very careful if you're going really close to the blue, because it can mix with the blue too much and look a bit muddled. At some point, I even took my brush and only dipped it in the what was supposed to be the clean alcohol cup. After it got a little bit of pigment in it, I could almost just draw from that to make really pretty faded strokes of this corally pink color. With projects like these, I always say the devil's in the details. And boy, oh boy, with this cup, I could have sat here for hours. Here I'm just going around with whatever kind of color I have in that clean alcohol cup, or I dip like a little bit into my colored cup and a little bit into my rubbing alcohol cup, and just add in some strokes in areas of this orange color. I just really love the contrast of that coral next to the deep blue veins. I was also going around with my clean brush and trying to blend out any sort of like harsh lines that formed at the edge of those colored sections, like almost where it looks like a watercolor droplet. I would just blend that out with my clean brush. Next, we're going to take it up a step further with some white alcohol ink. I poured a few drops into my medicine cup here, and with a clean, fine brush, I'm going to go around to any sections that look harsh or have a line where I don't want a line. You know, when you apply alcohol ink and it, like I said earlier, like that watercolor droplet look, I want to get away from that in certain parts. So I'm going to blend those out with the white alcohol ink, and this is going to really help clean up the whole look of this cup. With your brush and the alcohol ink, you're almost scrubbing the edges. Anywhere you want to erase, just scrub it off with your white alcohol ink and this brush, okay? At this point, we should have something that looks like this. And next, I'm going to add in some very fine detail with my fine liner brush. This brush is meant for like nail art and stuff, and it's absolutely perfect for this project. I'm going to dip that into the same black and blue alcohol ink that we mixed earlier. And I'm going to further define the veins that we created earlier. We lost some of the detail when we went through that fading process, and I just want to make sure that those veins look real and organic. Also adding small little stress fractures here and there. If I want to add to the color saturation, I can do that with this step as well. We're not going to be fading out what we're adding on here now, so it's really important that we keep a shaky hand as to mimic actual cracks in marbles. We don't want any like harsh or straight lines. It almost helps to roll the brush as you're making your stroke so that you get that nice organic looking squiggly line. Once I was done with that, we're going to move on to my second favorite step, which is adding in the white details. I'm going to mix a few drops of white acrylic paint and a couple drops of gloss pouring medium. If you don't have gloss pouring medium, you can also use water, but I like to use the pouring medium because it's going to dilute our paint a bit without losing any of the pigment. After mixing that together, I'm going to take another one of those fine liner brushes, And we're just going to vein in some random white lines. Again, trying to roll the brush as we apply the paint so we get a nice squiggly line. And after I have my line placed, I'm going to use my finger to dab out certain places. It's really going to add some beautiful depth and detail to this design. This is the step where I really saw it all come to life. Truth be told, this is my first time doing anything like this, really. I've done some alcohol ink marbles before, but not to this detail. And I'm telling you that the white paint step is just the cherry on top. This is what really sets this look apart. I like to use my finger because I have more control of how much I'm dabbing it around and where it's going. I suppose you could use a sea sponge if that's easier for you. But I'm an artist. I'm going to get my hands dirty. I want to really get in there. Once we've done that all the way around the cup, we should have something that looks like this. And I let this cup dry overnight. You don't have to seal your inks. You just need to make sure they're fully dry before you apply your first coat of epoxy. I've already mixed 30 milliliters of epoxy, and I probably will only apply 10 milliliters of that onto my cup. We want to have a nice thin layer, but we don't want to have too much drag. So not too thick, not too thin. We should be able to smoothly glide over the surface of our cup. And then with the remainder of our epoxy, I'm going to divide that into 3 medicine cups. One, we're going to add a little bit of kind of like an extra fine white opal glitter. The next one, we're going to add a microfine silver holographic. And on the third, we're going to add just a tiny crumb of white epoxy dye. I will have all of these additives listed in the description box below. And after we've added those to our 3 different pots of epoxy, we're going to mix them up really well. And then I'm going to start applying them to the cup with my white glitter first. Using my metal stir stick, I'm just going to kind of drop it here and there in random places, similar to how you would see like in quartz or granite where there's those random sparkly places. Once I'm satisfied with all the placement of the white glitter epoxy, I'm going to move on to that microfine silver. And with the microfine silver, I'm just going to pick some up with the end of my stir stick and just kind of splatter it around randomly. This is such a microfine glitter that it's not going to really make too much of a difference, but it is such a beautiful, subtle detail that adds to the realness of this marble that I just absolutely love. Next, I'm going to stop my turner and we're going to apply the white epoxy. It's really important that you mix such a tiny amount of that white epoxy dye with your epoxy for this one because we almost want it to be milky. We don't want it to be very opaque as to not take away from that beautiful marble that we just spent so much time painting. So I'm going to use the flat end of my stir stick and just sort of smear it on here and there, or any parts of the design that I feel should look a little more muted or that might have been too bright. After applying all that, I hit it with my torch really quick just to pop any bubbles. I let that dry for about 8 to 12 hours before moving on to our sanding. And as usual, we want to sand around the top rim so that we can expose a fine line of stainless steel. This fine line of stainless steel is where our final coats of epoxy will adhere to create the final seal for our tumbler on the outer rim rather than the very top rim where it's more vulnerable. Once I'm done with my sanding, I'm going to clean this up with some rubbing alcohol and a paper towel. Then we'll hit it with a little bit of tack cloth to apply our final coats of epoxy. This cup took 2 final coats of epoxy before it was totally smooth, and that was it. We were done. I just love these designs where we do all the hard work on the first layer and then all that's left to do is just smoothing it out with epoxy. We did something similar last week with big design impact with little effort on our part as far as different layers and things like that. But I'm obsessed. I love this. I'm so happy with how it turned out. I can't wait to see you guys recreate this. If you do, please be sure to tag me. I really want to see them. Thank you so much for watching my video, and thank you to all my subscribers. You guys have been with me for so long. This channel, I think, is over, 3 years old now? Holy moly, and I'm still having fun. Thank you guys. You're amazing, and I can't wait to see you next Saturday. And a big thank you to all of our Flynn Sisters exclusive members. Thank you for your pledge. Your support means the world to our channel. If you love this video, you could check out our last video here. Also be sure to find us on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and of course subscribe for all our new videos that come out every Wednesday and Saturday. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon.